Hi, travelers. Welcome to Reach the World. For over 20 years, Reach the World has used virtual exchange to inspire youth to become curious, confident, compassionate global citizens. My name is Tim, and as part of Reach the World's efforts to support educators and families during the COVID-19 pandemic, we're sharing free live stream discussions with some of our active virtual exchange travelers around the world. You can find an updated calendar of live stream events and much more at athome.reachtheworld.org. Today, we are joined by Fulbright alumna Sonia Sonia Urquidi. I think I got it.
Urquidi.
Yes, there we go. Sonia has been living, working, and conducting research and education off and on for a year and a half in Santiago, Chile. She's joining us from Santiago today, which I'm very excited about. Sonia's virtual exchange from Chile is open to any student who wants to follow her experiences, and we'll add a link to her journey homepage on the Reach the World site in the YouTube chat bar to the right-hand side of your screen. During today's live stream, please use the chat bar to let us know you're here and share any questions you may have for Sonia. We'll get to as many questions as we can in the next 25, 30 minutes. So without any further delay, it's time to go on a journey to Chile. Welcome, Sonia.
Thank you so much. Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Sonia. I'm from Wisconsin in the United States, but have been currently living in Santiago, Chile since January. I was also here in 2018, where I did some research with my grad school project. And that was a wonderful experience. It was so great that I actually decided to return to Chile when I got back and apply to a Fulbright to come back and continue my research. As was already mentioned, I work in the area of education, but international education and on the side of research design, and have a degree in global affairs and sustainable development. So it's kind of a mix of a bunch of funny words, but basically what I've been doing is working with an organization here called Enseña Chile, which is like Teach for America in the United States. You may have heard of it. And I'm working with one of their teams that goes to different schools in different parts of Chile and works with school directors and administrators on how to use data and feedback to keep getting better. And so I've been working with them on developing their projects and their programs. Was doing that in 2018 when I was here in Chile before, and was going to continue doing that now here that I'm back. My Fulbright, unfortunately, with COVID-19 was canceled, and so I had to readjust a little bit. But now I'm continuing to work with Enseña Chile on not the same exact project, but on helping schools here adjust to the COVID-19 situation, which I'm sure you as students who also attend school have had to adjust a lot to these different changes. And so it's been really interesting to talk to like my friends back in the United States about what does the situation look like back where you're living, as I'm dealing with the situation here, and talking with students that live in Chile, and teachers that live in Chile about how they're dealing with the situation. It's been interesting and challenging, and we've all had to adjust, but I'm learning a lot as we go. And it's a really interesting different time to be abroad during a situation like this, where you have to adjust not only to the changes that are coming from COVID-19, but in a context where you're speaking a different language, where your social networks are very different, where systems are different, like even looking for healthcare has been interesting. So I'm learning a lot in that way.
Well, that's fascinating, Sonia. I'm really glad that you could join us today. And I know you've been working really hard and sharing those experiences through your virtual exchange on the Reach the World page. My colleague Mara has shared a link to your virtual exchange in the chat bar. And I know there's a bunch of students who are joining us today. So I'd encourage any students who are interested in learning more to definitely go to the virtual exchange and put any questions you have for Sonia today in the chat, and we'll be sure to get to them. I want to sort of take a step back before we get too much into Chile and talk about you and your experiences becoming someone who is interested in the wider world and living and studying and working and conducting research abroad. How did that journey begin for you?
Yeah, so if you want to go back and read my autobiography, is a little bit of this in there. But so I'm half Bolivian as well as Polish and German. And so this interesting mix of backgrounds has always made me interested to know a little bit more about my family and where do they come from and what does it mean to be someone of mixed race and have relatives in Latin America, for example. So in college, when I was given finally the opportunity to study abroad and do some research abroad, I decided to go for it and was able to study in London, and at that time was able to visit Germany and Poland, which was incredible. And I also was given the opportunity after applying for a scholarship to go to Bolivia and do some research there. I was interested in music therapy and was able to actually find an internship to go to Bolivia and do that there for a summer. And being able to actually be in a place where I had family and I had those deeper connections was really eye-opening. And it was the first time that I felt like I actually could connect to my Bolivian identity, was being in that place and meeting those people. And that also inspired me to continue to learn Spanish because it was in the language that we spoke at home. And so that's been an ongoing challenge and something that I've enjoyed and continue to work on here in Chile is my Spanish language practice. So really, once I came back from those two experiences, if some of you have traveled before, you might know how this feels is once you go abroad, or once you're not even abroad, but once you travel and you experience a different place and different people, you find you just get so excited about doing it again. You get so excited about meeting new people, having new experiences, trying new foods. And so I think that bug just kept catching on. And what I was realizing in college is that, you know, travel doesn't just have to be for pleasure. It can also be something that's really connected to what you're passionate about. And so I've always been passionate about human rights and education, I think, because education was so important to me as a place where I felt like I could grow and learn. And so I kind of wanted to dive more deeply into education, not just from the perspective of the United States, but also from the perspective of places outside of the United States, because I think there's a lot to learn from the systems in other countries as well. Because the United States has a unique, and every state has a unique education system, but so does every country, and there's a lot we can learn from them as well. So that's why I think after university, or after college, where I studied economics and music, I thought it'd be really exciting to apply my background in economics and my interest in travel and learning Spanish to like learning about education in different parts of the world. And that's sort of what inspired me to say, okay, I'm going to pursue that academic path, but I'm also going to do it from an international perspective.
Very cool. Wow, what a great journey so far. You have a bunch of student fans who are joining us online, and I can tell that they've already been reading and enjoying your articles. Rose says she saw your pictures from Patagonia and thought that they were gorgeous. Awesome. Fernesi is wondering, let's just go right into Chile specifically now that we've had a really nice introduction to you. Fernesi is wondering, what's your favorite part about Chile?
That is so hard to say. Great question, though. I would go with two things. The first is, as someone who really loves the mountains and being outside, the landscapes of Chile are just amazing. So like you said, the Patagonia pictures are amazing. It's truly incredible, and those pictures don't even do it justice. So in the bottom half of the country is the Patagonia region. There's also the Patagonian region also stretches into Argentina. But it's just this amazing place where there are mountains and there's glaciers and water features. It's extremely cold, so you can't really travel during the winter, but during the warmer months is when everyone goes. And it's just some of the most dynamic landscapes that I've ever experienced. Because you can, I don't know, when we were there hiking, it would go from being sunny 1 minute to suddenly raining, to me wanting to take off my jacket and all my layers to suddenly being so cold. And it was really amazing to notice. My friend and I who were on the trip were like, kept saying, well, Patagonia is so beautiful, and like it's even cute because there are sometimes there'd be like a little flower or animals, and that's what you'd see on your left side. But then you look to your right and there's like a massive glacier that and storm clouds, and it just the difference in the dynamic of the Patagonian region is just incredible. So the landscape is one thing, and that's only part of the South, and there's so much more that I want to see and want to travel to. And it's really common for Chileans also to take trips down south, and they'll take the month of February to go travel or camp. People are really outdoorsy. And then in the north, for example, you have, I should share my screen.
Yeah, I was just going to interrupt you and ask if you could share some of those
I had
photos.
a couple pictures.
Can you just touch real quickly on, you just said February is a great month to travel down south. For us, February is a miserable month, at least for me in Chicago. Like, why is February such a great month to go to Patagonia?
Yeah, so being in the southern hemisphere, we the months or the seasons are switched. So February is the height of summer, which is really interesting because actually the day that I left from Wisconsin to come to Chile, it was snowing. It was a blizzard, and then I arrived in 90-degree weather. So that's why it's a good month for that. And it's actually their summer break, and not only schools take off, but also a lot of the businesses take off, and so it's a good time to travel. Where's the share the screen thing?
It's just right at the bottom. It should be right at the bottom of your screen.
Oh yeah, right there. I found it.
And we have sort of like an average connection here, so let's see if this works. So far, so good though.
Can you see this?
Yes.
Cool. I'm trying to, okay. So these are a couple pictures from Patagonia as we were hiking, but this is kind of what I'm saying by, like, look in the back there, how terrifying that mountain is, but at the same time in the front you have this beautiful greenery. And here's me in front of this massive glacier where we actually heard an avalanche occurring, and then saw it. We thought it was thunder, but it was actually an avalanche happening, where there was all these glaciers, but with climate change and with the change of seasons, they often are moving and changing as well. And then here's another closer up picture of the glaciers. This is Glacier Gray, and you can't see too far back, but because of the clouds, but it goes on and on for miles, which is crazy to think about. Just another couple pictures. So this is from Patagonia too, and this is from the opposite side of the country. So all the way up in the north is the Atacama Desert, and it's the driest desert in the world. In the world, I think so. And it does not receive much rainfall at all. Actually, we're also in a drought here in Santiago too. So Santiago is between this Patagonia region I'm talking about and the Atacama Desert, a little bit closer to the north. Because Chile is the longest country in the world, you may have heard. And these colors in the water are just incredible. And again, you kind of get that contrast between this really dry desert area and then like the snow in the mountains, and those are actually volcanoes back there as well. And this was me in 2018. I went mountain biking up in the desert, and this is in Valle de la Luna, which means Valley of the Moon. And you can see in the back, it kind of looks like the moon. It looks really different and funky. Again, this is hiking a volcano with this dog that didn't mind the altitude. We were up there at over 18,000 feet, which is extremely high. Just a couple more pictures from the desert. Again, this is the Valle de la Luna, where it's extremely dry, but you get these really crazy, interesting land formations, rock formations. And this is actually close to Santiago. This is called Cajon El Maipo, which is like a dam. And it's just a beautiful, this was in the winter. And so this is right by the Andes that are really close by us, because the Andes Mountains, they run all the length of South America, and the length, or not of all South America, I don't think, but at least from the top of Chile to the bottom. And so you get the Cordillera, or the mountain range, is right next to us, actually. I can see it when I go outside. It's really beautiful. And so that in the back there where you see the snow is the Cordillera. And this is me standing on a mountain or hill that's actually kind of in the middle of Santiago. So we even have some dry nature nearby, which is cool. Oh, and this is just a picture from the center of the city. Yes?
Is that the city that you can see sort of down in the valley in the previous picture? Is that Santiago in the valley?
Part of it, yeah. Yeah, it's part of it.
Okay.
But it's really all around.
Gorgeous photos, dramatic landscapes. I'm glad you brought us back to Santiago, because I'd love to talk a little bit about your daily life in Santiago. I imagine it's quite different than daily life in Patagonia or the deserts in the north. But it's also a big city. So how would you say, maybe pre-COVID-19, what would your daily life be like in Santiago?
Yeah, definitely. So Santiago is a really big city, 6 million people. It's actually the biggest city I've ever lived in, which is an interesting change. It's really metropolitan. So what's kind of interesting is it feels different than living in the US. And I've been to a number of cities in the US, but also really similar. Like if you're getting around, you can take a bus and the metro, just like any public transportation you'd find in the US. So it's pretty easy to navigate that way. Except for that everything is in Spanish. And then there's like little things here and there that I keep finding are really different. But my day-to-day life, so I found an apartment when I first moved here that was 15 minutes from the offices I was going to be working in a pretty metropolitan, pretty bustling area of Santiago, and I could walk there. And at least in my case, the day-to-day would be, get up in the morning, have a tecito, some little tea, and go to the office where I work with my team. Things are pretty casual there, which is kind of nice because it's a nonprofit of younger people. And usually in the evenings, I would go work out. So one of the ways that I was working on adjusting to Chile was like finding a gym. Just to kind of find that normalcy of life again, because something that's can be hard to do when you move to a whole another place, whether it's another city or another country, is reestablishing your normal. And so I was working on kind of finding my routine, and I was looking for a yoga studio and a gym. So that was kind of what I would do after work every day. And then in the evening, sometimes I was starting to meet some friends through various things. So I am a musician as well. And so I started to look for some musical events and made a couple Chilean friends. So, a few evenings, one of these friends that I met named Lalo would take me to some jazz, like a jazz club where we would go listen to music. And it was really cool to be in that space and be hearing the same songs that I know from as jazz standards that are played around the world and in the US. And so kind of bringing that back, but seeing Chileans playing the same kind of music. And I was learning a lot of vocabulary, like listening to them talk about music, but in Spanish. Another thing is, so my roommate and I are really close. I found, again, the apartment I live in, I found this wonderful Chilean girl who is the same age as me, and she's also a teacher. And so sometimes we'll spend time just talking, and I learn a lot from her. I learn a lot of vocabulary from her. I learn a lot about the education system, and she tells me about what her job is like, what it's like interacting with Chilean kids and everything. So before I was a little bit more, I could walk around and go to different parts of the city. And so I do a lot of exploring too. And now it's a little bit more encerrada, as we say, a little bit more static, staying in my apartment. But every once in a while, I can get out and like go on a hike or something.
Okay, wow. Sounds like a great way to spend your days. There's some interest online about what instruments you play. You said you're a musician. Do you have any, do you play an instrument? And if so, what?
Yeah, so I mentioned I studied economics and music. I studied clarinet performance, so I'm a clarinetist, and I brought my clarinet, which was a good idea, especially when we're holed up in here. And then I play some guitar and I sing.
All right, great. We have a question online from Victor, who is really enjoying your hearing from you and is curious to know what you find the most rewarding about your work that you do.
I love that question. I'd say the thing that's most rewarding, and sometimes it's difficult, sometimes I have to remind myself of this, is that I'm having a direct impact on a child's future. Or not, I guess not that direct. And that's why sometimes it's a little bit hard to stay motivated. But what I mean by that is, so my work is essentially related to how can we improve education, but how can we improve the learning of each student and the learning of each child? And my belief on why I went into education is because I think if a student knows how to learn and wants to learn, it can open so many doors for their future, and they are in charge of what that future looks like. And so that's what keeps me going, is that it's a sustainable way of producing change as well. So something I think about all the time when I'm working, especially in a context that's not my own. I'm not a Chilean. It's not my place to come in and say, you should be doing this way. Why would I don't know the context of Chile better than the Chileans do. But I do think if it can help better education or better learning in some way, that's a really sustainable way of creating change, because then that Chilean kid is going to grow up to be able to better their own country or better their own future. And so I think it's a sustainable way of creating positive change. And just being here and like learning from the education system, how it works here, what are the things that work, what are the things that don't work, informs my work for one day. I'm planning to go back to the US and work probably in education in the US. And something that's really interesting with, and one reason I chose to come to Chile to look at education is, like the US, there are schools that are private, there are schools that are public, and there are schools that are called subvencionados, which basically means they have public money but are more privately run. And these are kind of like charter schools in the US. And so having that really similar system, or having that system in the US, is actually really similar to the system that's here in Chile. Sorry, that was a little bit confusing, but the systems are similar. And so we can learn a lot about, well, the differences and similarities in those systems and what works and what doesn't work. And so I think there's a lot of learning to be done that way.
Absolutely. Thank you for that great response. And thank you, Victor, for your question. We've got so many great students on today's call. If you have questions, we have about 5 or so more minutes to speak with Sonia. So make sure you drop them in the chat bar. We'll get to as many as we can. I want to insert a quick question of my own, just because you've had a chance to spend some great time in Chile and in Santiago. And I wonder if you've witnessed any traditions, Chilean traditions, whether they're food related or cultural in some other way, that you've really enjoyed or found surprising in some way.
So I don't know if this is like counts as a tradition, but eating lunch is like a really big thing. I think in the US it's more dinner. But like here, getting together with the family, and so lots of families also live in the same area. It's a lot less spread out than in the US, because the vast majority of people live in Santiago. So getting together for lunch is like huge. So you eat lunch around 2, usually a lot later. Always is hard for me to wait till then. And it's usually like this big meal that's prepared. And people stay for hours and talk for hours. And while it's not always traditional food, there's often sometimes traditional food that's served, like pastel de choclo, which is like a corn and beef dish that's prepared and like really hot and warm and tasty. Always really good desserts like torta, which is like cake, but usually a little bit more mojado. I'm losing my English. Like moist, and with manjar, which is like a dulce de leche or caramel, can be served, and it's absolutely delicious. And so I think there's a big emphasis placed on family. And so I've been invited to a lot and been able to attend a lot of really amazing like lunches. I think that's something that's very continuous throughout, and I've seen pretty consistently with all the families I've been able to interact with.
Well, you've made me very hungry now. So I wonder generally what you, if you were speaking to somebody who really didn't know much about Chile, what do you think it's most important for them to understand about the country and the culture as a whole?
I'll give two hopefully quick answers. The first is like related to the language. People say like Chilean Spanish is one of the hardest Spanishes, which I would agree with. Now, having been here for a while, there's just a lot of slang and they speak really fast. And so sometimes I feel like I speak Spanish really well, and sometimes I'm like, I don't know what's going on. So always a high learning curve. And then the other thing is a little bit more serious, and that comes from so Chile was under a dictatorship until 1990. And that is really important because it has shaped a lot of what the social dynamics are like nowadays. You might have seen that Chile was in the news in October for these massive protests of over 1 million people that happened in the streets. And while it's not on the news anymore, those sentiments and ideas are still very present. So after the dictatorship ended, Chile went back to democracy, which it had a while back. And there's actually a lot of influence from the United States on that transition into democracy, especially on like the economics of how the country was going to be run. And while that was good in many ways, it also has produced a lot of anger and frustrations and a high inequalities within the people here, among other issues related to gender and education and pensions. And so there's a lot of built up frustration since the 90s, so 30 years later, that people have been really fighting to change, and that came into the discussions that were had in October. And so even today, that's still a very sensitive topic to talk about the dictatorship, because there's still people that are alive that experience that. And then in the younger populations, it's a lot about change and how do we create change and what did that change look like? And so there's actually a lot of talk about, once COVID-19 is over, that there's going to be, those protests are going to happen again. And we're waiting to see if the Constitution will be changed, is really what we're looking for. So really also, it's very present even now.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that perspective. What an interesting time to be there and see for yourself what's happening. I can't believe how fast 30 minutes has gone. Unfortunately, we're running out of time, but we had such a great group of students today who are watching the live stream and some great questions on the chat bar. I really want to thank everyone who joined us today for this live stream. Especially want to thank Sonia for joining us from Santiago today. It's been really nice talking to you, Sonia. You can check out our complete list of upcoming Reach the World live stream events at athome.reachtheworld.org. And you can remember also that any of our past events are available on demand on Reach the World's YouTube channel. And with that, I will say goodbye and thank you again, Sonia.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.